The 19th and beginning of 20th century imperialism led to the beginning of our current problem. The First World War displayed the way Europe was distributed, the way nowadays Europe is distributed. And the Russian revolutions and the Russian Civil War displayed the new ideologies that are going to fight during the 20th and 21st century. It's the beginning of the rivalry between the United States, Russia, and China, current world powers. Of course, you remember we studied 3 different types of systems of governments during the unit about the old regime, unit number 1. Absolute monarchy, English parliamentary system, or parliamentary monarchy, and republic. Now, studying the 19th century systems of government, we can classify them into 2: authoritarian political systems and liberal political systems. The authoritarian political systems had these characteristics. The ruler was a king who had all the power. If parliaments existed, they had no power at all. Militarism was usual. These countries used to be multi-ethnic countries, such as the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or the Ottoman Empire, and people living in these countries had few individual rights. The liberal political systems had different characteristics. The principle of separation of powers was the key to limit the government's power and to achieve a more fair society. Suffrage existed and was extended to achieve the universal male suffrage. People living in these countries had important individual rights, such as freedom of expression or the right of assembly. And socialist parties started being part of parliaments due to the right of vote for the workers. Industrialization in non-European countries played an important role. Let's study the 3 most important ones: United States, Russia, and Japan. Russian Empire was so big that it didn't depend on other countries' resources. So in Russia, the autocracy was the way of work, the system of government. Actually, it was an empire with an emperor called the Tsar. Tsar held all powers. He was the head of the state, he was the head of the government, he was the head of the church, because he was the highest religious authority of the Orthodox Church. Russian society was an old regime society, privileged and non-privileged social states. The nobility were the owners of large lands, with hundreds or thousands of serfs living and working there. Noblemen were the higher officials of the army, and they held top positions in the government. The non-privileged states were workers in cities and peasants, the majority of population actually. Living conditions of peasants were extremely hard because they were serfs under an absolute control by their lord. Tsar Alexander II issued a decree conceding the emancipation of the serfs in 1861. The goal was to give freedom to the serfs, to improve their living conditions, but actually their economic situation was so horrible, so hard, that their living conditions improved almost none. Russian Empire was a multi-ethnic country, because it was inhabited by Russians, Ukrainians, Armenians, Turks, Chechens, Kazakh, Belarusians, Yakuts, Germans, Uzbeks, and a very long etc. The United States was a large country with few population. Most of its inhabitants were located on the east coast, and soon they started expanding westwards to colonize new territories. This process was known as the westwards expansion. The states of the United States of North America were divided into 2 types: industrial and trading states, northern states, and agricultural states, the southern states. When we studied industrialization in Japan, we studied the emperor Meiji Tenno was the one who started this industrialization, the one who ended the feudalism in Japan. So between 1867 and 1914, Japan became an industrialized country with a high Western influence, but the emperor remained being an absolute monarch. Nevertheless, the emperor ended the traditional policy of isolation of Japan in order to reach trade agreements with Western countries, United States and European countries. Of course, you remember when we studied the French-German War and the unification of Germany after the defeat of France. Do you remember the picture we saw, the proclamation of the Reich in Versailles Palace? Deutschland, Deutschland, lieber Germany became a military and economic power. The German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck created several alliances to maintain certain balance in European politics. Actually, the German goals were to isolate France and maintain an equilibrium in the Balkans. France was the main enemy of Germany, because they shared a border, and both countries had an interest in controlling the Alsace-Lorraine area. This area was an industrial zone reaching goal that belonged to Germany since the defeat of France in 1870. Of course, Germans feared the French may want to take back this territory, and that's the reason Bismarck tried to isolate France. Balkans region was complicated too, because different countries had interests there. The most powerful ones were two empires, Russian and Austria-Hungarian Empire. To avoid a war, and because Bismarck feared that a hostile combination of Austria, France and Russia would crush Germany, he created his series of alliances called the Bismarckian Alliance System, Sistemas Bismarckianos. They consisted of dual alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary. Later, when Italy joined them, it became the Triple Alliance, and the League of the Three Emperors, Wilhelm I of Germany, Francis Joseph of Austria-Hungary, and the Tsar Alexander II of Russia. These alliances lasted since 1871 for almost 20 years, but they came into an end when the German Kaiser died, and his successor, Wilhelm II, changed completely his policy. The new Kaiser was more aggressive. He replaced Bismarck and started a period of armed peace since 1890 to 1914. During this period, all European countries increased the size and power of their armies and weapons. The European powers divided into two blocks: the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria and Italy, and the Triple Entente, Russia, France and Britain. Not only the antagonism France-Germany was a source of conflict, the imperialism and the colonialism was a source of conflicts too.